U.S. Arab Radio Network presents Season 3 of the Ray Hanania Radio Show, sponsored by Arab News, the leading English language newspaper in the Middle East. Each Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern, veteran journalist Ray Hanania explores issues facing Arab Americans on WNZK AM 690 radio in Detroit and on WDMV AM 700 radio in Washington, D.C. And now, your host, Ray Hanania. Watch the show live on Arab News Facebook page.
Welcome to the Ray Hanania Radio Show. I am Ray Hanania. It is Wednesday, July 12th, 2023, and this is Season 3, Episode 11. We're brought to you by the U.S. Arab Radio Network and sponsored by Arab News, the voice of a changing region, the leading English language newspaper in the Middle East. Arab News at arabnews.com is an award-winning newspaper covering the Middle East with bureaus in Paris, London, Islamabad, Tokyo, and coverage in the United States, where I am their U.S. special correspondent. Our radio show focuses on the Arab American community and on their issues, and also touching on Middle East coverage from a U.S. and American perspective. Our interviews today involve two guests. The first is Illinois State Representative Abdelnasser Rashid, who will share with us his harrowing experience of having visited his heritage homeland of Turmus Ayya in Palestine in the Israeli-occupied West Bank with his family and children. And I say harrowing because while he was visiting his family in the village at Turmus Ayya, the village came under attack by these armed extremist Jewish settlers who've been rampaging through the West Bank, targeting Muslim and Christian villages, burning down homes, burning down buildings, burning down cars, beating up the civilians, destroying their olive trees, and shooting several people. Several of these Palestinians were killed. And this fits into this violence where the few days before that, before he got there in the middle of June, 4 Israelis were killed by Palestinians who shot these 4 Israelis dead. And that followed a series of weeks of violence in which Israeli settlers, these armed settlers, because the Palestinians legally cannot carry weapons, but the Israeli settlers can, and they do, and they can stop anybody that they want. They killed something like 24 Palestinians in the 2 weeks prior to the shooting. So it's hard to say when the violence starts, who started it, what began. It's just a continuing cycle of violence where Palestinians are killing Israelis, Israelis are killing Palestinians, and it's just fueling the intensity. So Abdelnasser Rashid, what made that interesting was he's an elected Illinois State Representative. He represents a district in the city of Chicago and in the Chicago suburbs, including in Bridgeview and some of those communities. And because of his stature, this violence got some attention. Had it not been for the fact that he was a state legislature, the media would have completely ignored that story. And then after the break, we'll talk with our second guest, Steve Metsch, a freelance journalist based in Illinois who recently covered the killing of 2 Arabs in New York City. One was a victim of a wild rampage. He was a 86-year-old Yemeni grandfather of something like, 100 people. Sons, daughters, wife, grandkids, great-grandkids. And this suspect just shot him and shot several other people in a rampage for no reason. And plus, we'll look into the killing of a Jordanian American in New York City who was the victim of an attack while he was working in his store. According to Steve Metsch, he spoke to the police in New York, and they told him that they didn't believe that either of these people, the Yemeni victim or the Jordanian victim, were intentionally targeted because they're Arab. Anyway, we're going to take a quick break before we get into these interviews. So just hang tight. I'm Ray Hanania. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back right after these messages.
ArabNews.com, bringing you breaking news from across the Middle East and the latest on Arabs in America. Get inside the latest headlines with expert analysis and insights at ArabNews.com. Join over 5 million Facebook fans and over 10 million monthly readers. ArabNews.com. News that matters to you. Get ready for an amazing experience at Ishtar Restaurant on 15 Mile Road in Sterling Heights. Enjoy excellent hospitality from owners Ali Al-Baghdadi and Fatty Bonham, serving the best in Mediterranean food. Try Chef Ali Al-Baghdadi's famous shawarma, the best Iraqi grills and food, and the best Arabic and international dishes. Dine in our authentic atmosphere or take out. Call 586-698-2585 or check us out on Facebook. Ishtar Restaurant practices all CDC guidelines and is open every day 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. Have an amazing experience today at Ishtar Restaurant, 3625 15 Mile Road, Sterling Heights.
Are your hands feeling numb? Do you feel pain opening up a jar, turning a key? Are you noticing that your elbow and your shoulder are becoming stiff? Or were you recently injured in your arm? Hello, I'm Dr. Al-Majid Katranji, and at the Katranji Hand Center, which just recently opened down the street from the Somerset Mall, we can provide you with the latest in hand, wrist, elbow, and shoulder care. Visit us at www.katranjihandcenter.com to learn the latest techniques that we have to offer you, and I look forward to taking care of you.
Visit us in Troy at 1565 West Big Beaver Road, Building F, or call Katranji Hand Center for an appointment at 248-869-4263. That's 248-869-4263.
What's my ETA?
Your estimated time of arrival is 9:17.
I'm late. I'll have to punch it.
Speeding will save you just 1 minute and 36 seconds. It will also increase your risk of a crash, as well as the odds that you will be stopped and issued an expensive speeding ticket.
Yeah, but...
In 1 year, there were 22,000 speeding-related crashes in Michigan, resulting in 200 deaths.
If I had someone in the car with me, I'd drive slower. But it's just me.
This is not a logical response. Though you have no passenger, surrounding cars contain 27 others, including 5 children and 1 Labrador Retriever.
How do you know all this stuff?
I know everything, Kevin.
Your risk of a crash increases with every mile you drive over the speed limit. So slow down. Speed enforcement is happening now. A message from the Michigan Office of Highway Safety Planning.
My guest right now is Abdelnasser Rashid, who was elected to the Illinois State Legislature representing the Southwest Suburban region of the 21st Illinois District last November 2022. The first Palestinian, he is also the first Palestinian to serve in the Illinois House, which has some 118 House members and 59 Senate members on the other side of the aisle. And he also is Muslim. And I know there are a couple Muslims in the legislature. Abdelnasser Rashid, thank you so much for joining us on Detroit Arab Radio.
Ray, it's great to be back. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, would love to have you on. And I know you've been involved in a couple issues that I want to get into. But first, tell us let's introduce you to the audience. A lot of people in Detroit, Washington, D.C., and some of the Arabs from around the country, I know they've heard of you. But let's talk a little bit about you real quick. Give us a little background about yourself, your family. Tell us about your election career and your recent election to the General Assembly in Illinois.
Yeah, thanks so much. So for viewers who are getting to know me for the first time, my name is Abdelnasser Rashid. I was elected in November of 2022 to the Illinois House of Representatives, becoming the first Palestinian American elected to the Illinois General Assembly, and along with my fantastic colleague, Representative Nabila Sayed, one of the first 2 Muslims in the legislature. I was born in Chicago, but spent 6 years as a kid living in Palestine, which we'll get back to, I know, in a little bit. I went to Harvard University, came back home to Chicago, and spent about 10 years working in the public sector, 4 years in Cook County with former Cook County Clerk David Orr. Before that, I worked in the immigrant rights movement, worked for Bernie Sanders' campaign, Chuy Garcia's campaigns, and then ran for office several times because I want to make sure that I'm doing everything I can to lift up my community and my state. I was really honored that the people of the 21st District sent me to Springfield. We just wrapped up our first legislative session where we passed a budget that's both fiscally responsible and that uplifts working families, that invests in education, that invests in healthcare, and that protect our environment. So that's a little bit about me, and it's been such a wonderful experience.
And I know you have a lot of support from the Arab American community, but also from the non-Arab community. A lot of the non-Arab American community have supported you also. So you're doing pretty well for a guy. You've only been in now, what, about, we're talking 7 months, I think, right? You're going into your 8th month soon?
Yeah, well, actually, I was sworn in January, so it's been 6 months now.
All right. Now, tell us a little bit about your visit first back home. Your family's from Turmus Ayya. You went back there in June to visit with family. That's where your family is from. Tell us what happened while you were there.
Yeah, so I grew up in the village of Turmus Ayya, which is near Ramallah, only 25 miles from Jerusalem. I lived here when I was a kid from ages 5 to 11. I did all of my elementary schooling here. And I have been back since then. I a few weeks ago came with my wife and our 3 kids to visit my parents and to visit relatives here in Turmus Ayya. And on Wednesday, June 21st, I get a call from my mom saying, hey, where are you? Settlers are attacking our village. I was in Ramallah at the time running some errands, and we start getting videos, and she tells me they're burning homes, they're burning cars, and people are being attacked. And my heart dropped because, one, I wasn't there to help protect my parents and other family members, and the videos were just shocking and horrific, of hundreds of armed settlers attacking the village. And unfortunately, one young man was killed. He is married to a U.S. citizen, and they have 2 young children. So that was Wednesday, the 21st. The very next day, around 7:30 p.m., I get a text message saying, in all caps, the settlers are back. They're right here. Send help. They're coming.
Wow.
And my heart dropped there too, because that message came from one of my neighbors. It came from next door to me, like a few doors down from me. And we immediately started hearing people running in the street and screaming. One person was coming to different houses and saying, flee your homes. And as we actually got ready, my wife packed a bag with our important documents and our computers, and we started getting ready to go. And then we hear the gunshots. So we had to change our strategy. Now it was no longer safe to leave the house. We had to stay inside the house, and we bolted the doors and barricaded them. We closed windows. We started making a safety plan, trying to decide, should we go upstairs or down? And really, in that moment, I didn't know whether we would live or die.
Wow. That had to be scary. That had to be frightening.
It was scary, and it was heartbreaking. My kids are with me, and my 7-year-old daughter, she's turned 8 since then. Her birthday was just a few days ago, but she clung to me, and she said, "Dad, what do we do if we get shot?"
Yikes. How do you answer a little kid like that? That is really rough. And then and how long did this go on? I know that we see these stories from the West Bank. Turmus Ayya happened to be one of the targets, I guess, of this gang of armed settlers who were roaming around. And from my understanding, with the support, as it turns out, of the Israeli Defense Forces, many of them, not all of them, but many of them watching while these settlers were rampaging through, West Bank villages like the one where you were at.
Yeah, so Turmus Ayya wasn't the only village attacked. They've attacked dozens of villages in the last few weeks. And back in February, they hundreds of them also attacked the village of Hawara near Nablus and burned many houses and also killed some people. And in fact, one high-level Israeli minister has called to wipe the village of Hawara off the map, in his words.
Yes.
So what we are describing, like you just said, Ray, is violence that is supported and even encouraged by the state. The Israeli Minister of Defense, Itamar Ben-Gvir, is calling Israeli settlers living in illegal settlements to take up arms against Palestinians. He said, "We will be killing more Palestinians.
And obviously
And
we get into this issue where anytime you criticize Israel, you get in trouble, you're called anti-Semitic, but you're being very specific. Like a lot of people, we're talking about government actions. I criticize our government all the time. Nobody calls me any names. But when you criticize a government that happens to be even a foreign government, for some reason, this one government, it doesn't matter what we're talking about, we're going to be attacked. But I think you've been very specific. You're a civilian. And had you not been an elected legislator, I'm not sure this story would have gotten the attention of the media that it has. And I think that's a special role that you have that others should see, that once you're in elected office, you can elevate these issues to help bring out the truth as you are doing.
what we are doing here is criticizing a country that is carrying out a violent military occupation and that is committing human rights abuses and has been doing so for a very long time. And, while what's happening here is absolutely horrific, I am heartened to see that American public opinion has shifted dramatically on this issue. When you look at the surveys and polling done by Pew and others, it has been it's very clear that more and more Americans understand what is happening and support Palestinian human rights and want to see our country take action to hold Israel accountable.
You were very factual. You sent a letter that I thought was very factual, that was devoid of politics, and that focused on the issues of how you, as a civilian and a member and colleague of the Illinois Legislature, 119 representatives, including 118 representatives, including yourself, and 59 Senate members, you sent a letter detailing what happened. And I thought it was a moving letter and important for other colleagues to read. What kind of response did you get?
It's been an incredible response from my colleagues. I know it may not all be public, but people are, including in the Illinois Legislature, and of course colleagues in other units of government, whether in the city government, county government, or even Congress, are horrified about what's happening. And I think there is a greater awareness. Like I said, the American public opinion has shifted, and so has knowledge and concern about this issue among elected officials. And so, I've been very just grateful to my colleagues for their messages of concern and of support. And they've been asking, what can we do to help? And I truly appreciate that.
And I think that's important. I know I reached out to a lot of legislators and, tried to get some reaction. Most of them, I would say, almost all of them that responded to me were very sympathetic. This is a terrible thing. You're there with your family. You didn't do anything. You were just there in the middle of a act of violence that was being committed by these settlers, these roving bands of settlers that roam around the West Bank. And but they were so afraid to go on record publicly, and I can understand that. But you're right, there was a lot of support for you, and I think a lot of sympathy for the letter that really detailed what happened. Let me ask you, let's take it to the next level. I know ADC announced that they were going to look into anything. Were you ever able to hear anything more from them in terms of them being able to do anything?
I've met with many international organizations who've come to Turmus Ayya to look at the damage that was done. We met with some officials from the State Department, and of course, journalists who've come to cover what's happened here. And, at a minimum, what needs to happen immediately is the perpetrators of the attack need to be held accountable. I believe Israel's arrested 4 or 5 out of the several hundred settlers that invaded our village. I believe they know who the soldier or police officer is who killed the young man in my village. I don't believe he has been prosecuted. So accountability is absolutely important. But let me be completely honest. Palestinians are not holding their breath. No one is expecting Israel to hold people accountable. It does not have that kind of track record. It actively encourages violence against Palestinians. And the attacks against my village and against other villages were advertised publicly, but the Israeli military did nothing to intervene. They looked the other way.
Yeah, it's almost like there's a January 6th riot taking place every day or every other day there. And the public knows about it. The government knows about it. The Israeli government should have known about it. And they're responsible for the people that live there. And they should have stopped it. And I agree. Historically, we've seen these things come and go. Americans have been killed. Nothing's been done, like Shireen Abu Akleh. She was killed over a year ago, and we still haven't seen justice in that case. It's a real tragedy. And again, I'm emphasizing to my listeners, we're talking about government policies. We're talking about policies that are wrong. Doesn't matter who they are, who is behind the violence. So nobody should be allowed to say, oh, you're criticizing Israel. There must be something wrong with that. That still is a terrible wall that they hide behind rather than to answer some of the issues. But I know that there are a lot of Jewish legislators and Jewish activists here who've been very supportive and are very angry with what's happening back there. Tell it, what do you think needs to be done? I mean, obviously, it's not something the Illinois legislature can do, but what do you think needs to be done to bring this to a point where we can move forward in a positive, peaceful direction?
The question the United States needs to ask itself, the U.S. government needs to ask itself, is how do we remove obstacles to peace? How do we remove barriers to peace? And give close to $4 billion in military funding every single year? That's certainly not the solution. That doesn't help advance the cause of peace. That doesn't help the situation. That enables Israel to do what it's doing. Giving Israel international diplomatic protection in the United Nations and at the International Criminal Court. That is not something that is helpful to advance the cause of peace. So the United States needs to examine its role and really reevaluate the military funding that we're providing to Israel.
Now, obviously, you're not a member of the Congress where a lot of these issues are decided, but you are a member of the Illinois General Assembly. Illinois, unfortunately, was one of the first 2 states, I think, maybe 3 states, to adopt a law that punishes citizens, American citizens, who criticize and support a boycott of Israel's government. And that has been expanded. I spoke to Dima Rashidi a number of weeks ago, and she said it's increased from 27 now to 35 American states that have passed these so-called anti-BDS laws, which in various ways deny Americans, regardless of your race or religion, from criticizing a foreign government. It's unheard of. I've never heard of that before. Is there anything that can be done about the Illinois BDS law?
Yes, and I have started that conversation with my colleagues, and I expect that there will be real interest in taking on this issue. The Illinois law, there are many different laws across the country, very ill-advised anti-BDS laws. Many of them do target individuals, like you said, and directly punish people who are critical of Israel or who refuse to sign documents saying that they will not boycott Israel. In Illinois, what they did is they instructed the pension fund to, what the law does is it has the pension fund penalize companies that choose to boycott Israel. And so
Correct.
A company like Ben & Jerry's that recently decided to take the moral stance of not selling ice cream in Israel's illegal settlements, they got penalized by the Illinois Pension Board for that action. That is wrong. That puts the state of Illinois on the wrong side of history. That impairs the ability of Palestinians and allies from working toward supporting the cause of Palestinian freedom and the cause of peace. So that is a conversation I am having with my colleagues, and I look forward to the progress that we're going to make on this.
And I think listeners should understand that when we're talking about the pension funds, we are talking about money that was taken from taxpayers, you, me, everybody else, paid by the government into these pension funds that were obligations that the government made to all these people. And so we're not talking about just money that's like independent of taxpayers. This is money that is that the pension funds and the state can decide how they invest their money to help businesses. So if I happen to have a business and I qualify for a loan from the pension fund under this legislation, I can't get it unless I sign a letter that says I will not boycott Israel. And personally, I think that is a violation of the U.S. Constitution. And I'm so glad to hear you that you've begun the conversation. It needs to be done in a smart way. And I think you're the exact person that needs to open that door. And for our community, your election was perfect timing. And we're expecting a lot from you on that. I know there's so many other things to do that you're working on, legislation. I know there's the MENA bill. Tell us about some of the other things that you are working on that you think are important to our listeners, especially in Illinois.
Yeah, so my office, we just launched 4 citizen advisory councils so that I can get input from my constituents and people who work in the district on education, on the environment, on small business, and on what was the last one? It's escaping me, but it's on our website. Very important to me that that I hear from people directly about their concerns, so that I could take that and use it to help shape my legislative agenda next year. The last one was on immigrant rights. That was the advisory council. I'd forgotten. I had a very ambitious legislative agenda as I entered the Illinois House, and I got 6 laws passed and expecting to be signed into law by the governor. One of them would expand affordable housing options. Another one increases would help support dual language programs in our public schools. And several others. One of them that's near and dear to the Arab community is one that adds a checkbox for Middle Eastern, North African on state forms, so that we can finally count the Arab community and other minorities from the Middle East. As I'm sure you're aware, Ray, and others who are listening, when you fill out the census and when you fill out many other forms and you have to indicate what your race is, we often feel invisible. We are invisible. There is no box for us to check.
Right.
And we get defaulted to white, and we get denied the ability to understand the needs of our community, the statistics about our community. How many students are there in public schools or in universities? How do we fare in public health? How do we fare in business? All of this critical data is completely absent, is not even being collected for Arab Americans. And I'm very, very proud to share that Illinois will be the first state in the country to start collecting that data on state forms.
And you and I have had this discussion. Personally, I've been involved in this the census issue for really 40 years. We began by wanting the word Arab placed on the U.S. Census at the federal level. I think what you're doing in Illinois is a great step towards the bigger problem that we have nationally. But why not just say Arab? I mean, there are a lot of people that think that we don't say Arab, we say MENA, because there are a lot of people that don't like Arab, but they're willing to deal with the word MENA in the legislature. And I'm not saying Arabs, I'm saying non-Arabs. Some of them just don't like us. And I'm wondering, why not the word Arab rather than MENA?
Ray, I really don't think that it's because of people liking or disliking us. I think just like Asian or Hispanic and others refer to geographic regions for the most part, Middle Eastern North African captures Arabs and others from the Middle East who would still be considered white, who are not. For example, Assyrians, for example, Turks, or people from Iran.
Right.
The Middle East has a very, very large number of Arabs, of course. That's where Arabs live. But there are also other groups that are not Arab who would be left out if it said Arab and not Middle Eastern.
How about
and also North African, where you have Berbers, for example.
How about defining the word MENA to include a lot of these things? Because I know that The Hispanic category is defined at many different levels. Even the Black category, African Americans, they're defined at many different levels. Has there been any thought about taking the word category MENA and then subcategorizing it to include the word Arab? To me, as an Arab, I
Yes.
want to see that word there. So I'm wondering if that's been discussed.
Well, there is actually a very active effort on the federal level to define the word MENA, and I know that the Office of Management and Budget recently put out a call for public comment. I was one of those who submitted comment on that, as well as other organizations nationally and locally. We did not define it in the Illinois statute because once the federal government defines it, it's going to be important that we follow the federal definition. So that is an active issue right now, and I would encourage anyone who's listening who cares about it to contact your member of Congress or go and look for that public comment. I'm not sure if it's still open, but you can still make sure that your voice is heard on how you'd like MENA defined.
All right, we've been really honored to have our guest Abdelnasser Rashid, the Illinois State Legislature, representing the 21st District, which includes a number of Southwest Suburban and I think part of the city of Chicago, or just the suburbs?
I have the southwest side of Chicago, parts of Garfield Ridge neighborhood.
Got it.
And mostly suburban, from Berwyn and Cicero down to Bridgeview.
You're a great representative. I'm so happy to see you in the legislature. So many Arabs have tried to win seats there, going back all the way back to the 1990s. It's great to see you break that glass ceiling. Abdelnasser Rashid, my guest, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Ray.
And this is Ray Hanania. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll continue the radio show here at WNZK AM 690 Radio and WDMV AM 700 Radio in Detroit and Washington, D.C. Broadcast on the U.S. Arab Radio Network and sponsored by Arab News. We're going to take a break and we'll be right back right after these messages.
ArabNews.com, bringing you breaking news from across the Middle East and the latest on Arabs in America. Get inside the latest headlines with expert analysis and insights at ArabNews.com. Join over 5 million Facebook fans and over 10 million monthly readers. ArabNews.com, news that matters to you.
Life for Relief and Development has now been rated as one of the best charities for humanitarian aid. Life's humanitarian projects span the globe, and Life is celebrating its 30th anniversary of providing essential life-saving aid to people and communities in 36 countries, regardless of race, color, religion, or cultural background. Where there is life, there is hope. And when disaster occurs here or around the world, including being one of the first responders to the Turkey-Syria earthquake crisis, Life for Relief and Development rushes in to provide food, medical aid, and shelter to those in need. We are looking to help the earthquake victims, and we take 0% overhead on emergency donations. So please help improve these efforts. Learn more about our involvement to help the helpless and bring hope where it's needed most, and make your tax-deductible donation to Life for Relief and Development now at lifeusa.org or call 248-424-7493. That's 248-424-7493. At Top Rehab Physical Therapy Clinic in Dearborn, we provide effective physical therapy sessions in order to limit pain and discomfort. Top Rehab provides physical therapy care for any diagnosis prescribed by a physician, and we regularly see and treat conditions such as stroke, TMJ, fibromyalgia, sciatica, joint pain, and more. We use a variety of pain management methods, including modalities, soft tissue mobilization, and therapeutic exercise. If you're in need of physical rehabilitation or physical therapy, get the highest quality health care at Top Rehab. Most insurance is accepted, and we're open Monday, Wednesday, and Friday 8 to 6, Tuesday and Thursday 8 to 5, and Saturday 10 till 2. Call for an appointment today at 313-846-0555. That's 313-846-0555. Choose Top Rehab Physical Therapy Clinic on Michigan Avenue in Dearborn. Life's too short to be in pain.
Kushat's Mediterranean Market and Shish Kebab offers a great array of your favorite Mediterranean meals. Meals range from lamb specialties, shawarma sandwiches, seafood dinners, and they offer special big trays of your favorite food, plus much more. Kushat's Mediterranean Market and Shish Kebab address is 32839 Northwestern Highway in Farmington Hills. Their phone number is 248-538-9552. That number again is 248-538-9552, and the supermarket is open from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. Kushat's Mediterranean Market and Shish Kebab will definitely leave you satisfied.
And now I want to introduce my audience to Steve Metsch. He's a freelance journalist in Illinois who recently covered the killing of 2 Arab Americans in New York City. One that was a victim, I think, of wonton, just arbitrary violence. I don't think he was a target, but Steve can let us know what happened. The other involved an attack on the grocer or the store owner, and both of them were killed. Plus, we'll look at the increasing violence across America in cities like New York and in Chicago, where Steve and I both live. And the city of Chicago, by the way, has been ravaged by unprecedented levels of violence. This past weekend was unbelievable. Steve, listen, welcome to the Ray Hanania radio show.
Well, I've been a journalist since 1982, and so it's 41 years. Started in sports at a little paper outside Chicago in Crystal Lake, and did features in Decatur, Illinois, which some may know is in the center of Illinois. And then did 25 years with the Daily Southtown, covering all kinds of stories, features, sports, news, you name it. And now I'm a freelancer since 2016. Again, can't get out of the business. It's in my blood, I guess.
Yeah, and most of these papers are in the Chicagoland area, correct, in Illinois?
Yeah. Yeah, the ones I work for now, there's a small paper in Summit, Illinois. There's a paper called the Naperville Sun. There's a chain, Shaw Publications. They cover various suburbs. So yeah, I'm still doing it and writing a lot.
All right, well, that's good. So you really know how to cover a story now, and plus you've been writing for Arab News, which is the leading English language newspaper in the Gulf and the Middle East. And you covered a story that just happened. It's kind of a tragic story in New York City, right? About 2 Arab American men who were killed. Tell us a little bit about what happened there, and then let's go into some of the details if we can.
I did not get to New York, but I covered this online through various publications. A very sad situation. 2 Arab American men. One was an 86-year-old man from Yemen. The other was a Jordanian man, age 35. The older man, he was a victim of some crazed shooter riding around New York and Brooklyn on a scooter, randomly shooting people, Ray.
Yikes.
It's not, I don't think this was an intended targeted victim. He just saw a man and shot him in the back.
This was the Yemeni guy, right? Hamoud Saidi.
Yeah.
I think 86 years old, just 86, shot.
And he was walking to his mosque to pray when this knucklehead shoots him in the back, and he was taken to a hospital, to Jamaica Hospital in New York, and he was pronounced dead there.
And this suspect, I guess, was 25 years old, and he had a weapon.
25 years old, worked as a delivery guy for a restaurant.
And he's on a scooter?
He's on a scooter firing. When he was taken into custody without incident, they found a 9mm gun in his possession. He murdered the one gentleman, injured 2 others. Let me find, I had a story.
Yeah, I know that Saidi, if I recall, he just immigrated from the U.S. from Yemen's capital. And, well, actually not just, but he's been here like almost 60 years. He came here in
right. According to his son. Yeah, he came here in 62. So he came here for a new, better life, and a life that was tragically ended by this man shooting him at random. And it's just terrible.
For no reason at all. He's just walking to his mosque from his home, 86 years old, probably spent the good part of his life in this country, probably doing very, very well. And all of a sudden, bam, it's over.
Yeah, this guy, I know he's in police custody, of course. They took him in without incident. He's charged with 1, count of murder, 2 counts of attempted murder, because he shot 2 other people with his gun.
So he was, they said something like there were like 6 shootings, but
it was one missed. one shooting incident missed intended, but also shot a 21-year-old man in the shoulder, 44-year-old man in the cheek, critical condition. A 40-year-old man was shot at, not injured. A 63-year-old man shot in the right shoulder. And the police New York Post to talk to his roommate, who really noticed nothing strange about the guy, but evidently something went off inside his head. I don't know.
And this guy, I think the police, right? They identified the shooter as Turmus Ayya.
Yes.
That's a popular sports name.
Right?
Popular sports name. When you hear that name, you think, wow, good baseball.
Yeah.
You don't think of violence.
No, I think about our old buddy Jose Abreu, who used to play for the White Sox.
Yes, for a while he was a good baseball player. But this guy, I'm assuming he's from the Dominican Republic.
Right.
He's here in the States. Did the police ever say, do we know why he went on this shooting spree? Or is this new thing in America where guns are the new entertainment? They just shoot people because the violence level has been terrible.
We know where we live, Ray. When you go downtown to Chicago, is your head on a swivel? Mine is.
Yeah, no, you got to be really careful.
Yeah. They don't have a motive yet. He is in custody. I talked to a police spokesman Monday and just confirmed all the charges and on the basics of it, but there's no motive, and it's sad indictment of our country that this happens on a far too regular basis.
Yeah, can you give us a rundown on what he's been charged with? This suspect that the New York police have arrested in the shooting of this Yemeni American, 86 years old, been in the country since 1962. Hamu Saidi is the guy's name. And there's a big Yemeni community in Chicago. There's a big Yemeni community in Detroit. And I think there's a big Yemeni community in New York City. But he wasn't targeted because he was Arab, correct?
No, I know they don't believe he was. This is just random. You're walking along the street, minding your day on a Saturday afternoon in New York City, which I'm sure was a beautiful summer day, and you get shot.
Wow. And what are some of the charges?
Okay, the police spokesman on Monday told me that Abreu had been charged with murder, 2 counts of attempted murder, and 6 counts of criminal possession of a weapon. Now that, for our listeners, is if you have a gun in your possession and you use it, there's a criminal possession. 6 counts. So he fired it 6 times, at least.
So every time you fire the weapon intending to hurt somebody, that's a criminal charge.
Yeah.
And then he killed somebody, and then he may have injured 2 others. Those are the other.
Right. One man was in critical condition. I haven't checked yet today on how he's doing, but one man was in critical condition, shot in the cheek. You can imagine what that did.
Now I know, and then in New York City, again, in a separate shooting, there was a Jordanian man. I think his name was Bassem Abdul Rahman Al Khatib. He's the father of 2 kids. He was shot and killed when 2 masked men entered his convenience store, right where he worked, and shot him. His brother told the local media, and the incident was all caught on security footage. What's the details on some of that?
So what we have here is basically these 2 fellas walked into the store, apparently to rob the store, and wind up shooting the shopkeeper, whose name you mentioned, a 35-year-old gentleman, shot him dead, cold blood, in his store. The video that I saw doesn't show the shooting itself, but it was released on CBS News New York, a YouTube video from the surveillance tape that the police released. You see the men coming in. You don't see what happens, but then you see them run out of the store, apparently in a red or maroon Jeep Cherokee. And this happened at 7:53 in the evening on Saturday. So here again, a beautiful summer night in New York City, in Staten Island borough, of New York. And guy's doing his own business. He's started his store, raising a family.
And he's young, 35 years old, I think, right? 35 years old. He's 30. He's young. He's only 35 years old.
Only 35.
2 kids, a wife, family. Jeez.
Came here to start a new life, and then his life is cut short by some idiots with guns.
Do we know if he was there any suggestion that he was targeted because he was an Arab, or because they just thought he was a good mark as a or as a store owner where they could get some money.
Yeah, I think that's more the case. I don't believe it was targeted because of his ethnicity. I think it was the fact that they saw a potential, the thing I have to say, Ray, I've never robbed anybody, but if I was going to do that, I would point a gun and say, "Give me your money," then I'd run out of the place.
Right, because when you use a weapon, it's bad enough, and then to kill somebody, that in most cases they can and they do find these people, and it's the end of their lives too. They end up going to jail. Now, unfortunately, if you believe in the death penalty, or unfortunately, if you don't believe in the death penalty, they may or may not get a death penalty conviction when they're convicted of a lot of these shootings, and they end up sitting in prison for 60, 70 years. And then 40 years from now, they'll be telling the media that, "Oh, I was just a good kid. I didn't mean to do it," after they've served all that time trying to explain away this stuff. Not
to mention all the money the taxpayers waste on these worthless pieces of garbage.
Because the
It
taxpayers
reminds me of Mark David Chapman, the man who murdered John Lennon.
Yeah.
In 1980, he's still sitting in prison in New York State. Almost 43 years later.
Wow.
Why? Why are they still paying? I mean, killing anyone is wrong, but if you take someone's life, I kind of firmly believe that, eye for an eye.
Yeah. Well, in the case of the Yemeni victim, the guy, I think that Hamoud Ali Saida, who's 86, I think one of his relatives said that, I think he said something to the effect that, the shooter didn't just kill one person only. He didn't kill, I guess it was his son. He said, "He just killed my father. He killed the whole community, my whole family." And they have the guy is a patriarch with a wife, 6 kids, 30 grandkids, and 31 great grandchildren now that are impacted by this one act of violence by this suspect, Abreu, who nobody can see him. Why would he do that?
It was the saying, wrong place at the wrong time, right?
Yeah. Now, violence isn't new to America, is it?
Oh, I think the country's founded on violence, as sometimes it feels, doesn't it?
Yeah, and there's this big debate about we got to get the guns off the street, but I don't know how you feel about it, but what do you think are the prevailing attitudes about guns? Because you usually hear the two sides arguing that you got to get rid of the guns to stop the violence, and then there are the people that are saying you get rid of the guns, but only the people who obey the law-abiding people will stop buying guns, but the illegal criminals are still going to get guns, right? No matter how, they'll find a way to get them, and they're the ones that are using the guns to kill people, right?
The old saying, if you outlaw guns, only outlaws will have guns. We've heard that for years. I don't know. I think about Australia. Years ago, there was a fatal shooting at a school, and they just said, "That's it. No more guns." All right. They collected all the guns.
And what happened?
Guess what? Do you ever hear about fatal shootings in Australia anymore?
I don't know. Maybe not. But is it now? There are two kinds of violence, right? There's the violence that's a domestic violence. So you and your wife are having an argument. You happen to have a gun in the house, and the gun becomes part of the anger. It's not an intentional, you don't go up to somebody to kill them in most cases, in these domestic violence incidents, although in most cases where a woman is killed, it's the husband who's the suspect, right? The first one.
Yeah.
But then the other act of violence, but the other act of violence are these random ones that we're seeing, increasing in cities like Chicago and New York and Los Angeles and Florida and all across the country, where it involves a gangbanger, somebody who's trying to get even with another gangbanger. Those people, you're going to ban guns? You think they're not going to use guns again? What do you, not you,
I
but
think
the public.
They'll still have their guns. The law-abiding citizens, if it comes down to it, will turn in their weapons, but there'll still be a fraction of people, mostly the bad guys, who keep their guns or find a way to get their guns, right?
Yeah.
So there's no end to it. I don't see what the end is. I don't know how to end it. I'm looking up some stats here about New York City.
Mm.
And this is from the New York City Police Department, that actually for the first quarter of 2023, New York City saw a reduction in the number of murders. 12.7%, 89 murders versus 102 a year earlier. But still, that's 89 too many.
Right.
You know, Chicago, I don't have the Chicago stats at the ready right now, but I know living here, it's got to be up. Don't you think so, Ray?
Well, I think that I was reading something where there, like this past weekend, there was something like 27 people were shot and 5 were killed in weekend gun violence just over the 4th of July this past week. It was like, I mean, you know, maybe those numbers are routine. You know, I don't know. So sometimes, what do they have in Chicago? Some 600 to 700 gun-related killings every year. I don't know what that compares to with foreign countries, but obviously it's a big concern.
It's a big concern. And this terrible story out of New York, the 2 terrible stories out of New York, reminds me of an event that I covered. This had to be, good Lord, probably 25 years ago. I was working for the Southtown. Now, for our listeners, Western Avenue is not trivia for you. It's the longest street in Chicago. Right. Western Avenue, in the South Side, there's a lot of car dealerships. We're talking, you know, Brighton Park area, neighborhood. And these 2 Arab American gentlemen ran a used car lot, which is not unusual there. There's a lot of them on that stretch of Western Avenue.
Right.
And about 25 years ago, I remember it clearly. It was in the winter. Some masked gunmen came in to rob them because car dealers have a lot of money, usually on site.
Right.
And he shot them both in cold blood. And I covered that the burial the next day, because, you know, with custom the next day. And it was a very cold, bitter winter day. And my heart was just breaking, just covered. And I know we're not supposed to be involved in the stories, but I was so sad to cover this because these 2 young men, they're like my age, in their 30s at the time, dead because of some idiot with a gun.
So, I mean, just because there's an act of violence doesn't necessarily guarantee that the perpetrators, the people that are behind the violence, are actually going to get caught. Even though the police do investigate all this, it doesn't mean that somebody's going to be prosecuted, correct?
That's absolutely correct, Ray. I'm reminded of a shooting in a Chicago suburb called Tinley Park. It's south of the city. 15 years ago, February of 23, 5 women were shot dead in a Lane Bryant women's clothing store. The man who shot them, there's an artist rendering for, you know, from surveillance and stuff, but he's never been caught. That's 15 years.
Wow.
So you think about that.
Yeah. And then in the case of these 2 Arabs, they did get the guy that killed the elderly Yemeni gentleman.
Yes.
They did get him, but have they arrested? Have they found anybody in the killing of the Jordanian, that young Jordanian man that got killed?
Not yet. Just have 2 masked men in a red or maroon Jeep Cherokee, which I'm sure there's a few thousand of those in New York City.
Yeah, and because it's not a hate crime, it probably doesn't get the same priority, does it? As
I don't think so.
A hate crime elevates it, doesn't it?
Yeah, hate crimes always seem to notch it up a few levels, you know, when there's hate crime involved,
because the community gets involved. And I know you looked into this, but I looked into it too. I couldn't see anything from, you know, Arab American leaders speaking out about these 2 incidents other than that they're tragedies. Nobody, because it wasn't a hate crime, right?
Yeah, right. I was looking for that same information when I did the story. I was trying to find information like, was there a Staten Island Business Association or something outraged? I haven't found anything yet.
Okay. All right. And go ahead.
It's sad because, you know, this will happen again. That's the sad part. That saddens me, and everybody should be sad by that. This is going to happen again and again and again. And look at the school shootings in this country. That's a whole nother thing. We could talk 20 hours on that one.
And I know that I saw a couple stories of, I covered a couple for Arab News involving Saudi Americans who were college students. One was killed by a woman who tried to rob him. Another was killed in suspicious circumstances. And again, they happen to be Arab, but I'm not sure they were targeted because they were Arab. And that kind of puts it in a different category, right? Because as you pointed out, that hate crime, it really jacks up the intensity of the community response and the police.
There's no doubt. There's no doubt. We've had hate crimes, and it's not always just ethnic. Hate crimes against gay people. It also gets a lot of attention because focused. It's targeted, if you will. It's targeted. Where these two, I don't think there's no mention by the police, especially the gentleman walking down the street.
Right.
He just happened to be in the wrong spot at the wrong time.
Yeah.
And the shopkeeper was probably seen as an easy mark, as they say. Let's go in there, but then again, why shoot the man?
Yeah, it is terrible.
I just don't understand.
So the bottom line, just to conclude all this, is it doesn't look like these were hate crimes. They just happen to be victims of this wave of violence that we're seeing across the United States, in which guns are used. It may fuel the debate, right, about whether banning guns or will have an impact or not have an impact. But as far as it looks correct that this is not a hate crime, so Arab Americans in New York don't have to sit there and say, there's more that we have to be watching our backs. This wasn't about them being Arab.
Right. It has not been classified as a hate crime. But it's still both are terrible situations. Yeah.
All right. Listen, my guest, Steve Metsch. Steve, I appreciate you joining us here at the Ray Hanania Radio Show. We're broadcast on the U.S. Arab Radio Network, sponsored by Arab News, every Wednesday at 5 p.m. in Detroit and in Washington, D.C. And I hope you enjoyed the program. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I'll have some concluding words. But Steve, thank you for joining us on the radio show today.
Thank you for having me.
ArabNews.com, bringing you breaking news from across the Middle East and the latest on Arabs in America. Get inside the latest headlines with expert analysis and insights at ArabNews.com. Join over 5 million Facebook fans and over 10 million monthly readers. ArabNews.com, news that matters to you.
Ziyad brand, quality products from our family to yours. Ziyad Brothers Importing offers the finest quality products, including brands like Sultan, Kraft, Nestle, Hook, Rico Picon, Donna, and many more. Ask your retailer to carry these fine products because you deserve the very best. For more information, visit our website at www.ziyad.com. That's www.ziyad.com. Ziyad, quality products from our family to yours.
When you're looking for the best in optical care, Dr. Imad Nakash is your doctor to see. With years of experience and thousands of successful procedures performed, you can trust your eyes to Dr. Imad Nakash. See Dr. Imad Nakash and his professional staff for your eye care needs. There's 2 locations to serve you. In Hazel Park, call 248-336-3937. 248-336-3937. In Rochester Hills, call 248-299-3937. That's 248-299-3937.
Thank you so much for joining us here at the Ray Hanania Radio Show, broadcast at WNZK AM 690 Radio and at WDMV AM 700 Radio in Detroit and in Washington, D.C., and on the U.S. Arab Radio Network, sponsored by Arab News at ArabNews.com. I will be back next Wednesday, 5 p.m. Eastern Time, with more guests and more discussions about Arab Americans. In the meantime, enjoy your week, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye, everybody.